The US administration under Donald Trump has gone on a tariff announcement spree, from general tariffs to secondary tariffs to tariffs specifically on the pharma sector, and for good measure, one on the movie industry as well. But despite announcement of tariffs on pharma imports into the US announced last week, why don't pharmaceutical companies in India and their investors seem to be in a panic, evident from the fact that stock prices have steadied after the initial dip? Hello and welcome back to Business Matters of the Hindu with me, K. Bharat Kumar. The Donald Trump administration last week imposed 100% tariffs on pharmaceutical imports into the US, pharmaceuticals that were branded or patented but not made in the US. Indian pharma stocks tanked that day, Friday, the day after the announcement. The Nifty Pharma Index slid by just over 2%. But when the markets opened again earlier this week, Monday and Tuesday, the Nifty Pharma Index steadied itself, even though it fell by a wee bit by about 0.15% and 0.1% on those 2 days. The likes of Sun Pharmaceuticals, which is supposed to be significantly impacted because of the nature of its business in the US, this stock actually rose on those 2 days by about 0.8% and 0.55% respectively. Here's probably why. According to the Global Trade Research Initiative, or the GTRI agency, European drug makers will bear the brunt of the US import tariffs on pharmaceuticals, while Indian pharma firms will probably be far less affected. The GTRA says that US import data for 2024 shows total pharmaceutical imports valued at about $213 billion, with India contributing in excess of $10 billion or accounting for about 6%. By contrast, Ireland accounted for about 24%, Switzerland for about 9%, and Germany 8%. Data from the Indian Pharmaceutical Exports Council, or the PharmExcel, as seen on the chart on your screens, show that the US accounted for a significant chunk, more than 1/3 of India's total pharmaceutical exports. In fact, the countries that follow the US, like the UK, Brazil, and France, accounted for anywhere between 2 and 3% each. These shipments include tablets, capsules, and injectables for the treatment of hypertension, diabetes, infections, cardiovascular and neurological conditions. Large volumes also cover antibiotic formulations such as amoxicillin, azithromycin, and ciprofloxacin, as well as vitamin and nutritional products. The GTRI notes that India's focus on generics rather than patented drugs could shield much of its trade from the force of these tariffs. In this context, it is significant to note that European firms such as Roche, Novartis, AstraZeneca, Eli Lilly, and GSK have announced investments exceeding $350 billion in US manufacturing, research, and supply chain facilities by the end of this decade. As a recent editorial in The Hindu points out, the impact on patients requiring specialized drugs for the treatment of cancer or other rare diseases could be severe. It also notes that US health insurance companies could pass on the higher costs of specialty or patented drugs onto policyholders. It notes that an Ernst & Young study conducted earlier found that if a 25% tariff were to be levied, then it would raise the cost of drugs annually by $51 billion for the US. And note, the final decision of the US administration is to levy 100% tariffs, not 25% alone. India's vast generics industry has, at least for the moment, been spared. Generics account for about 90% of prescriptions dispensed in the US, but only for about 13% of total value spending. Last week, PharmExcel chairman Namit Joshi said, "The proposed 100% tariff on branded and patented pharmaceutical imports into the US is unlikely to have an immediate impact on the Indian exports, as the bulk of our contribution lies in simple generics, and most large Indian firms already operate US manufacturing or repackaging units and are exploring further acquisitions." According to a report by HSBC Global Investment Research, among Indian firms, only Sun Pharmaceuticals seems to have a sizable sales of patented drugs in the US, accounting for about 17% of its FY25 revenue. The brokerage has actually maintained a buy rating on the stock. It says that the worst case scenario could be a hit of about 8 to 10% on earnings by FY27, so not just this financial year, but including the next. The target that HSBC has set for this stock is 1,850 apiece, and for context, the share closed at 1,598 on Tuesday, September 30th on the NSE. The real threat for Indian pharma firms lies here. If the conditions for the levy of 100% import tariffs by the US is expanded or clarified to include branded generics, then that is a danger. What is a branded generic? Let's take the example of paracetamol. It's an ingredient that goes into tablets that are painkillers. You and I could take up this ingredient. This particular case is not covered by any patent. The patent has long since expired. Now you and I could take up this ingredient, put it into a tablet, give it a brand name, say AB tablet, which is a painkiller. So the brand is AB, the ingredient is paracetamol, and that's not being covered by a patent. This is an example of branded generics. If the US expands its tariff levies to include all of these branded generics, that could have a significant impact on the financials of these firms in time to come. That brings us to the Did You Know section that we have for you in each episode. Did you know that in prehistoric times, pain and disease was said to be caused by evil spirits? And if witch doctors and shamans were unable to exorcise wicked beings from our bodies, then there was an operation that could just do the trick. This is one of the few medical practices from prehistoric times for which we have archaeological evidence. The practice involved cutting a small hole in the skull. The procedure was used to treat headaches, skull fractures, epilepsy, and some forms of mental illness, and it was employed worldwide since archaeology has uncovered skulls with holes in Europe, North Africa, Asia, Tahiti, New Zealand, and South America. Now that brings us to the quiz question for this week, which is related to the Did You Know nugget. What is the practice of cutting a hole in the skull called? Look out for the answer next week. It's very interesting. And here's the answer to last week's question, which was between 1500 and 1800 AD, which three countries accounted for more than 85% of global production of silver? The answer is, in this period, Bolivia, Peru, and Mexico accounted for more than 85% of world silver production and trade, as it bolstered Spanish influence in the New World and elsewhere. That's all we have for you folks in this episode. If you enjoyed what you saw, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until we meet again, have a wonderful time ahead.